So there'll be two Sam Cramblets. One of them's Craig Harvey, just for the record. I'll call to order the council of the whole meeting for March 16th, 2021. Members present, myself, Mr. Klein, Mr. Cleary, and Mr. Haney. Mr. Pierce as well, just joined. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the formation of the Ironton Improvement Corporation. Nate, I'll let you take it away. I'm playing dad taxi.
Okay. There's actually two purposes to the meeting. One was to discuss the process of the city and the condemnation of unsafe structures and that process that's recommended that from the solicitor and their opinion letter from January 21st that I forwarded out to everyone. And to kind of review that to make sure that the mayor and his staff was kind of on the same page with council and solicitor, along with making sure that we address financially the needs to make this program be a success with the city, and also to establish, or discuss the roles of the Community Improvement Corporation, and to take nominations and fill for the board of that Community Improvement Corporation. So I'd like to go through Brigham and Mac's letter step by step done for us to take possession of the property. So is that agreeable to everyone? We go through step by step and make sure that we're on the same page. Okay. He says first, City Ordinance 140201 adopted the 2006 International Building Code to condemn buildings and structures and the demolition of structures. The condemning process needs to occur as set forth in the 2006 International Building Code. So, Susan, are you familiar with this 2006 International Building Code and the process of condemning? And Brett?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You said second. ORC 71526B provides that at least 30 days prior to the removal of repair of insecure, unsafe structural defective buildings, municipal corporation shall give notice by certified mail of its intention with respect to such removal or repair to the holders of legal equitable liens record upon the real property on which such building is located and to owners of record of such property. A notice is provided in this section. A lien under section ORC 715.261 for such removal or repair is effective on the date the municipal corporation incurred expenses in such removal or repair. Susan, Brett, are you familiar with this process also?
We never had to do it under a lien, but there's also International Property Maintenance Code. And when I condemn, that's usually the one I use. But it's
okay. Do you have that? Do you have Brigham's opinion in front of you by chance?
I do not.
Okay. What's your email real quick, Susan?
I've got it. I found it.
Okay.
Send that to me if you don't care, Nate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I sent it, Mike.
Send it out to council if you don't care, Nate, because we didn't get it in our email. Probably don't have it. So if you don't care, just send it to council.
Okay.
Just put me on it too, Nate. We've sent that out twice to all council members, so hopefully you have it.
Yeah.
Is it the condemnation demolition opinion? I've
Yes.
got it. Yep, I got it. Don't worry about me. Yeah, thanks.
You're getting it again. All right. Okay. So I think, Susan, what we're trying to do as far as we're wanting to be able to gain ownership of this property eventually. So the process of being able to put a lien on it and foreclose on it and obtain that through the sheriff's sale is important in this process. Were you able to get that?
Yes,
Hello?
I have it.
Okay.
Hello.
So, do you feel like that would be something that you'd be able to work with as far as the lien portion of it?
Yeah, so I can figure it out.
Okay. All right. So step 3 goes on and states ORC allows the municipal corporation to collect the total cost of abatement activities by 3 different methods. Okay. So we're on 3 there if you're following along. And this will be option 3. The municipal corporation may file a lien on a parcel of land for the total cost incurred in respect to the parcel by filing a written affidavit with the county recorder of the county in which the parcel is located. It states parcel number, total cost incurred with respect to the parcel, and the date such costs were incurred. So also, in addition to the demolition, if there's maintenance costs that we would put on them for not maintaining the grass even afterwards, I think that would also fall into that if you did that on an annual basis of some sort. So the rest of it goes on in following option 3. 4th, the municipal corporation may pursue a foreclosure action to enforce the lien in a court of competent jurisdiction. The municipal corporation may elect to acquire the parcel by indicating such an election in the complaint for foreclosure and in an amended complaint. I just got a text from Brigham that said he is frozen and cannot hear anything. This is where I needed him to come in.
Tell him to
So-
log out. Tell him to log out and log back in because he's not even showing up in the Brady Bunch squares.
Okay. I'm just texting.
There he is. He's back.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. Right when you were getting ready to be up, Brigham. So we were discussing the process of the pursue foreclosure action to enforce the lien in the court. That's where we would need you to start coming in play. So on number 4, if you could advise Susan on the 3rd step also and how to proceed as far as filing that lien, or is that something your office would do?
So that's something my office would do. But as you see from step 3, we basically outlined 3 different options, 3 different ways to do it. And that's going to depend upon the property in question. So, our office should be involved in that whole process. So when Susan identifies a property, she should include us in the entire process. Once she determines the property needs to be demolished, and she needs to do it pursuant to the International Building Code. I mean, that's what we have to follow. So once that's done, then we really need to be involved from the beginning, and we can help. As you see, once you get to step 3, there are 3 different options of ways we can proceed. Again, that's going to depend upon the property itself. So, that's going to be between, the mayor and Susan and our office, I think, to determine which one's best for the city and which one applies to that particular property.
Okay. If we were to just kind of guiding along, if we were to do option 3, where we would go with a lien, and 4 with a foreclosure, and 5 with a sheriff's sale, assuming there's no purchase and there's that the original owner didn't come back after that 10 days, then the city would have ownership of that property, correct?
After there has to be 3 sales, actually. You have to do an appraisal of the first sale. But yes, at the conclusion of the 3rd sale, the city can get ownership at that time. Also, the city could buy it at the first sale if they chose.
Okay. All right. So step 6 and 7 kind of outlines the appeal process and as far as that goes, that the person would have. And then step 8, he discusses, once the city would own it, it would have to go through a bidding process, advertisement for 5 consecutive weeks, and so forth. Okay, so
Correct.
So that is where the Ironton Community Improvement Corporation comes into place. So in lieu of step 8, there would be just simply a transfer of that property once it's possessed by the city to the Community Improvement Corporation to return it back to the market. However, we've deemed it appropriate. Did I lose that?
So long as it's for one of those.
Yes.
You just have to be sure that it's for one of those purposes that's set forth in the statute.
Right.
So if you refer to my other letter with the Ironton Improvement Corporation, I detailed what purposes you can transfer it to that corporation for.
Right. Yes. And that was also in the ordinance that we passed last Thursday.
Correct. And the mayor today executed the documents to form that corporation. I will tell you that Ironton had a corporation with the exact same name from 1980. And I was unaware of that until after the ordinance passed, I started researching it. So I'm assuming the Secretary of State will give us back that name, but we're not positive on that. The way we applied today was the same name in the ordinance. But just so you guys are aware, that could be an issue where we would have to pass a new ordinance if we have a name change.
Hey, Brigham. So if the first board of directors for that in 1980 didn't set forth any term limits or expiration of their terms, would us forming that corporation again automatically reunite that board whether they're dead or alive?
No, that corporation was terminated in 1985. So any action that they took would have terminated with their official termination.
So we can proceed to set up a board of directors and not have that come back on us, right?
Correct. Yes. The only issue that I would see with the old Ironton Improvement Corporation would be we may not be able to use that name. Other than that, there's not going to be any negative effect from it.
Okay.
Okay. So, any questions for Brigham and kind of the playbook he laid out for addressing the unsafe structures, the condemnation process, the city's option to recoup those costs, or the transfer of that property to the Community Improvement Corporation? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. Go, Craig. I'm sorry. I'm bad.
No, I
This
didn't have anything. Chris, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Would we have to set up, then this may not be for Brigham, it may be for John. Would we have to set up a separate fund for this? And what would the initial funding come out of for this?
I think that would be up to council for that decision. I would set it up as its own separate fund. That way you won't have to worry about monies getting commingled in any form. And I would say that your seed money is probably going to be transferred from the general fund.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was already. Yeah, John, because remember today we already had to make the $99 checkout for the articles that he filed, and we didn't really know what fund to take it out of, but I think we did community development.
But it came out of legal fees and unallocated in general fund.
There, Chris.
We wouldn't necessarily need a fund. It'd be just a line item transfer out of the general fund, right?
I think that you would want a line item transfer. Go ahead, Brigham. You're shaking your head.
No, because it's a separate corporation, it needs to be an external account, much like much like our drug accounts. So we're going to have, and I know John hates external accounts, but that's what it's going to require. So an external checking account that the board of directors will approve, who has signing authority. The transfer can be allocated wherever council desires, but it's a separate external account because it is a separate entity.
Right. The allocation would just be a line item transfer out of the general fund. There wouldn't be a fund needed to be set up.
Okay.
No, but there needs to be legislation.
In our budget, I'm saying.
There needs to be legislation establishing the external account and legislation transferring the line item.
Okay.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Who
Yeah,
manages
we
the
would
board of
probably-
directors? Would manage the account, or John still?
The board of directors would have authority over the account and would designate the signing authority for the account. John would still be in charge of the account, and it would still be audited like our other external accounts. For example, the police department has a law enforcement trust account that is an external account. It has to be. We have the police department has a federal asset forfeiture account that is also an external account. And you can see John's face. He hates those, but that is required to do that.
So does John serve as the treasurer? He manages the budget, or like make sure that we got the money in there?
He'll be in charge of basic getting the information for the audit, but it will be the board who's in charge of the account and whoever they designate to, and it may be John that they designate to do it, but it's going to be the board of directors that makes that decision once the corporation's formed.
Here's one thing that I want to tell you is that all those funds that we're talking about, they are like revolving loan funds, CDBG, the police asset forfeiture fund. All of those funds are separate funds in our detailed trial balance. So to answer that one question, based upon what I'm hearing, I think that we will have to establish it in its own separate fund. Because we track them in our detailed trial balance. As I say, the revolving loan fund, police asset forfeiture fund, community development block grant, RLF, all those are separate funds in our detailed trial balance.
Brigham, so this is a quasi-government corporation, so it can't be in-house, can it?
No, it is a nonprofit corporation that is set up by statute. So there's statutory authority that allows a city to set this up. We are not what's known as a 501c3, so you can't donate to it and get a tax write-off. So it's nonprofit in the sense that it's not meant to make a profit, but it's not nonprofit in the sense that it's tax deductible for donations. So it is its own separate entity. However, the legislature has provided that municipalities can establish this type of a corporation and run it as we set forth in that ordinance.
Will it have its own separate federal identification number, or will it operate under the cities?
I think it will have its own because it's a nonprofit corporation, so it should have its own EIN number.
Then I think that it will have to be outside our detailed trial balance.
And
I think so too.
if it can't make money, is it a wash? Where's the money come back in from turning these around?
Well, I think you're going to have a very limited amount of expense transaction coming out of this company. The expense is going to come from the majority in the city when the city is going through the process of demolition. I think the majority of the expense that you're going to have is it might be some legal accounting fees that are tied to just its operations. As far as the sale of it, you'd have the sale coming back in if it went through that corporation to sell it.
Okay.
So basically saying that another way, basically the city will demo this, place a lien on the real estate, recoup that lien as part of the sale, so the city's made whole, transfer it to the corporation. Once the corporation turns it over or sells it, then that money will stay in the corporation, and that will be a majority of the money funding the corporation. So, as Nate said, it should be very little government money involved in the setup, other than setup.
Okay.
Nate and Brigham, if I may, let's go 6 months down the road, and Susan has identified a house, 2424 24th Street, as a house that she can foreclose on. Take us through the process from that point.
Is that way out there? Is that way out near Sims Creek, 24th Street?
That's that little shack you have behind your house.
You said 24.
That's the Waldo de-annexation property.
Hush now.
What's the real address?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You said 2424 24th Street.
Both.
Just wanted to explain how the process works.
Okay, so Mike, once it's foreclosed on, it would have to go through the sheriff's sale, and in that letter that Brigham detailed, it would have to go through 3, correct, Brigham? The owner of that property would have an opportunity, even 10 days after the final sale, for it to then to pay I guess what it was owed, the minimum on that, And other lien holders would also have an opportunity to buy that also. If none of that happens, then it would go back to the city for ownership. Okay. If that does happen, then the city would recoup that money for the demolition cost of that, and they would retain the property. Either the property owner or whoever else might actually have a lien on it that might pay it just to retain ownership. Okay.
At what point does the property get demolished?
It was on step 2 and 3 in that letter.
Okay.
They would serve a certified letter notice based on that. Within 30 days, they would have to comply with either fixing it to standards or demolishing it themselves. If they don't do that, then that's when the city comes in and demolishes it, places a lien for the cost of the demolition on it, and then proceeds with that process. Fast forwarding to the point where we said, let's just assume the property owner doesn't pay anything, the other lien holders don't pay anything, the city would have it. The city would have ownership of the property, and in lieu of trying to get that property back to market through a bidding process and all those bid requirements, we can transfer to the Community Improvement Corporation under one of those stipulations that Brigham highlighted and was in our ordinance the other day for economic development, so forth.
I have one quick question. Are there bidding requirements with this, or can you just sell outright?
There are no bidding requirements.
I have a question for Brigham. Is the lien the only thing keeping it from going in front of the Board of Revision and the land bank ending up with it?
No, the Board of Revision and the land bank are dealing with properties that are delinquent on taxes. These properties could be delinquent on taxes, but they also could not be. So is it possible to have some overlap? Yes. But if there's county tax, property tax owed, then that is part of the sale. So that has to be recouped at sale because they also have a statutory lien.
I'm just curious if, like, should we just pick and choose our battles then? If it's got property tax liens on it, should we stay away from it because it's potential that we could put money into it and then the land bank end up with it through the Board of Revision?
Well, the land bank wouldn't necessarily end up with it if you foreclose on it. The issue that the city would have that I see is that you're going to expend funds that you may not get back. So when you sell, one, federal tax liens and property tax liens do not get extinguished with the sale, meaning they go on with you, meaning you owe it. So yes, I mean, that's something we need to look at when we're determining from step 3 which option to go with. That's going to matter depending on what the liens are.
I understand that this deals with a lot of structural issues, dilapidated and blighted. However, what if there is a parcel of property that is a parcel that gets called and complained on every year, every week for high weeds, trash, all that other stuff? Are vacant properties available to be included in this?
I think Brigham's froze.
No, I'm with you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The question I think was, are vacant properties included? I'm not sure I got the whole question.
The question, Brigham, was a lot of times during the year, you look frozen again. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. A lot of times during the year, you will be called several times to the same vacant property for cleanup, brush cutting, trash removal, etc. Are non-structural inhabited properties, i.e. vacant land. Is that included in this also?
Not in this particular method, but there is a method for nuisance properties, a nuisance abatement suit that follows the same structure. And we've given a separate opinion on that.
Okay. Is that something that is going to be addressed also? Or is that maybe yeah, maybe no?
I mean, that's up to the administration, really.
Thank you.
How do we avoid taking on properties that the land bank potentially end up getting instead of this corporation?
Well, I mean, if the land bank has a pending suit, it's very easy to see that. So you would just avoid that because it's that the problem's going to be taken care of with the land bank.
Okay.
If I understand it correctly, the land bank is concerned with properties that are in arrears with their taxes, and this entity is more concerned with properties that are blighted and destined for condemnation.
That's my understanding, yes.
So when we put the lien on it, goes against their property. It's not against their property taxes.
No, it's a lien on their property, but it operates the same way as a property tax lien, meaning you're statutorily protected for it.
But we wouldn't be creating tax delinquent properties for the land bank to get involved with.
No, the land bank is specific to vacant structures that are more than 2 years delinquent in taxes, and that's it.
Okay.
Moving to a different question. I know there's a fund for the demolition of blighted properties. Would this new entity be able to use that fund that the city has used to demolish buildings?
I think that fund has been specifically set aside for demolition for properties that are not insured, or actually, if it catches fire at some point, those are used. And if they're not insured, I think the process goes through. They use those dollars, and then supposedly, I think, go through this whole process as far as putting a lien on it in the same manner. Or also, if they do need torn down, I think that money is used and until the insurance money is recouped. Is that correct, John?
That's pretty close. There's not a whole lot of money that comes into there. Occasionally, like I think in 2019, we had received money from Lawrence County Auditor on the real estate bill for some money for demolition. And it had been several years prior to that since we had received money on that. But that's basically my understanding too.
That kind of leads to my next topic was I wanted to make sure that, this thing, and I think Bob had some questions. Is the city going to have to pay for it? I think, yes. I think we're going to have to make an investment in doing this. Again, trying to recoup as much as we can and be creative in doing so. My suggestion would be to have a new line item under the Public Service Department that would be designated for demolition of unsafe structures, and maintenance of those properties, and have that managed in Brett's budget. That would be my idea, and keep that money separate for those in the actual demolition fund itself. For those insurance or fire incidents that we discussed, to make sure we have money pooled there. That's what I kind of like to see. I don't know if anybody has any.
So what we're by creating an outside account, we will never be able to transfer money from that account to any city funds.
Brigham, can that money come back into the city?
Correct.
You know, the only way,
Sorry, go ahead.
the only way I see that happening is if the corporation would, or if the city would put a mortgage on the property when it transfers. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that legally, but it's more of a John question. But I doubt that the money can be transferred from the corporation to the city. But John may know the answer to that.
I think I'd feel most comfortable asking the state auditors on that. But the first thought that came to my mind is that you could always do a donation from that one fund to the city of Ironton. So I think that you could possibly skin the cat by classifying as a donation back to the city.
The other option that I've been thinking about, because where the city's going to get stuck, as I see it, Chris, is if you demolish a property, you get the lien, you foreclose the lien, nobody buys it, so we're standing holding it. So now we've got the amount that we're out for demolition. We've also got whatever tax is owed. We could also have other liens. So where does that money get recouped? I mean, my thought, and I don't know that this is possible, but my thought is for the city to put a mortgage on the property that once it sells, it's required to be paid back. But I'll have to look at that to see if that works.
Brigham, I thought after it went through sale 3 times that the liens were off the property.
Well, but you're still going to have the cost of demolition, and you're still going to have the cost of tax. Those liens don't go away.
So, Brigham, couldn't we avoid that? As Sam said earlier, pick and choose our battles. If a property has a massive amount of lien on it, we don't get involved with that.
Absolutely.
And so the entire benefit of this is not as a money-making venture per se, but it replaces a blighted, nasty property. Eventually we resell it, someone builds a nice house there, and we have better home and a better community for that.
Yes.
I agree with that. My issue is with the city taking on this much liability. Which I didn't understand that we would have to create an outside account for this entity. But I think if we're going to do this, I think the liability needs to be on that outside account and nothing within the city. Like Mr. Anderson said, if we get put on the hook for yearly taxes if it doesn't sell, liens on the property, back taxes, things like that. I don't think if this is an outside entity, I don't think the city should be on the hook for any of that stuff. So I would like to see if we're going to do anything, and I don't even know that this is feasible or if it's even allowed, is for I don't even really necessarily want to call it a loan, but maybe the first couple of times, and then this really be self-sufficient and not using any city funds at all. Because it's kind of got me worried now that this is going to be an outside account with really nothing to do with our, I don't know. I'm really kind of second guessing what we're trying to do here if this is going to be an outside entity using city funds to demolish properties.
Chris, I think the whole point of appointing strong, savvy board of directors is for the city's investment to be the startup and minimal. For the city's investment to be the startup and minimal, but then the board of directors should be responsible for making sure that once we invest in that initial startup, that it is self-sufficient, that we shouldn't have to dump revenue or city funds back into that.
Right. That was kind of my idea in the first place. Is the first. I understand there's going to be initial cost, but my thinking was that this was going to be the revenue that was generated from this was going to be kept in the city coffers and not in an outside account. So what I would like to truthfully see is if we do have any initial startup costs, that I don't know that we can do this, have some type of repayment plan from Ironton Community Improvement Corporation to pay back the city whatever initial cost there is once they become, self-generating, self-sufficient, and they're generating all the funds that they need to operate. Would that be legal or allowable, or could we, work out a repayment plan?
That's what we were talking about with the donation back. I think that's probably where we'd have to have a donation back of that seed money.
Yeah, but then we got to talking about creating a budget line item for the demolition and all that stuff. I just don't think we should set up any type of budget for this unless it's a one-time expense to get them off their feet and then move along with it. That's just kind of got me worried that this is going to be. I mean, how do you, if you get into a couple bad properties, you're going to end up losing. We're not gaining anything.
Well,
I'm hesitant because if this is an outside account, I don't want to dump money into something that is not involved with the city finances. You know what I'm saying? You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Let me ask a question here. Could the city loan the new corporation, I don't know, say $5,000 to be repaid? Is that legal to do that, John or
Bob,
Brigham?
where I would question that is, in our detailed trial balance, our monthly financials, we can do an advance from one fund to another, and then it come back. Since this is going to be under separate federal identification numbers, I would say that the ability to advance is gone. That I wouldn't think that you could transfer back and forth with separate federal identification numbers unless one was designated as a subsidiary corporation of another. And then I still don't even know if that'd be right.
That makes sense.
Sam and John, if memory serves me, it costs between $7,000 to $10,000 to demolition a house, and so in just my opinion, in the startup fund, if we put say $25,000 as a startup fund, then you're going to have 2 council members on this board at all times, and when the entity becomes solvent, those 2 council members could make a donation back to the city, and then eventually the city will be reimbursed.
That would
I
be
think
That would be the ideal scenario, Mike.
Again, I think that the cost for the community improvement corporation to start would be very minimal. Like I said, as far as the recouping the money from the demolition, first of all, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know that you're going to go in this to make money. I mean, I think you're going to go in it with the mindset that I'm going to improve the community, and I'm going to try to get new homes built with income tax base increased and new utility users. I think that's the mindset going into it. That's just me. As far as the actual cost, again, Brigham described 3 methods of recouping that. The third one is the only one that would require the use of a community improvement corporation. If there's already existing taxes on there, for example, you could go through and file something, a civil suit against the person and try to recoup that money, or trying to figure out, or what was the first one? Or you could put it on or option 1, 2, and 3 under the third step. You guys seeing that? So one and 2 wouldn't even involve the community improvement corp. It would just be the third one. So, as far as if you're concerned about the community improvement corporation getting too fat because they're not incurring the expenses and they're just gaining the revenues, the sales, again, you could have a donation back once that happens. I don't think it'd be unreasonable for a loan from the city to that with a repayment either. I think you want to check with the auditor, but I think that's doable. But that's just my thing.
There's one thing that I'd like to see is there any type of a preliminary list of here's potentially a list of properties that should be demolished? I mean, is there anything like that? Because, there might be some areas that could be demolished through this corporation, and maybe about the only thing that you could ever get to develop there is selling it as a garden plot. Yeah, it might not be in an ideal place to build or remodel or rehab.
I agree with that, John, but let me stop you right there. The Community Improvement Corporation would not demolish it. That has nothing to do with demolishing it. The Community Improvement Corporation's only function would be to liquidate, to get it to the market. Okay. So the city would actually take control of the demolition process of it. So, I think Sam and Brett and Susan would work through that process as far as identifying those properties.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Nate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brett's got a more technical question, I think, for Brigham.
Brett's got a question, Sam.
Yeah, that's what I said.
All right. I apologize. I'm actually driving some, but I'm listening, so I can't see anybody. So, my question is if we condemn a property, by the International Building Code, we are not a certified building department.
Brett, you still there?
Meaning, like, it would have to be the county, like they do the commercial?
I don't think he was done with his statement.
Oh, he cut out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you all get that?
Nope.
Not all of it. You cut out when we're not a certified building.
Okay, yeah, we are not a certified building department. Would that have to come from the county building inspector or the state inspector to be able to do that? Before, the only person that we can't condemn properties the way our department's set up right now. That would have to come from the health department.
Did it come from the fire department?
Well, Susan, isn't Susan, have you condemned any?
Yep. I use the International Property Maintenance Code.
Answers my question. So Susan, we won't have, if it's structurally, we won't have any problems with that?
I don't see why we would.
Sounds great. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay. So, if the city were to pay for the demolition of a property, whatever cost that is, and we're talking about just a lot, trying to imagine some lots are worth more and some lots are worth less than. I would like to see language that the demolition cost back out of the sale of the property. Because if this is a nonprofit, is that possible, Brigham, that we can put language in there that states it once a property goes and the city funds the demolition after the sale of the property, the city retains whatever portion of the cost for demolition?
No. So as Nate said, the Community Improvement Corporation and the demolition of property are two separate issues. So the legislature has provided municipalities with the ability to demolish properties that are blighted, properties that are unstructurally safe. But that cost is incurred by the municipality. Okay. The third option that I detailed in my letter is if nobody purchases it, meaning if nobody on the market wants it, including the owner, including lien holders, if nobody buys it, then the city can deem the property unusable by the city. Once the city does that is when it transfers to the Community Improvement Corporation. But the city incurs all costs of demolition.
So the city could also, like you stated earlier, the city could also bid on it the very first auction or whatever, and then the city could then sell it for profit?
Yes. But you have to go through the bidding requirements to do that.
Right.
But the city could there's nothing that says the city has to transfer it to the corporation.
Okay.
The city can always demolish it and sell it because you got to understand, these are two separate legal theories.
Right. Okay.
Hey,
and in order for property to be transferred into the Community Improvement Corporation, the city has to make a determination that the property cannot be used for city use.
Okay. Good deal. Thank you for that.
Once we go through all the process to put it up for an auction, what I'm hearing you're saying is that the city could go purchase it at the auction at the going price or whatever. So does that mean once it's at that auction, then anybody on the street could also come in and purchase it? And then
Absolutely.
So the city loses all control of it.
Absolutely. So, but the city will recoup its money because you have a lien. So let's say the city pays $20,000 to demolish a property. That's the amount of your lien. Okay. It can't sell for less than that. So the city would never want to buy it. That doesn't make any sense because you're the lien holder, right? If someone else buys it, great. You've accomplished everything you want. You tore down your unstructurally safe property. You've gotten another buyer that's going to arguably improve the property and pay taxes on it. And you've got your money back. So city win-win-win, right?
Right.
You would never want to buy it because the city, after the third sale, if nobody buys it, you get it. You don't have to pay for it. It's your lien.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I guess that was the piece that I was missing, that we are now the lien holder, and whatever cost we incurred to demolish it and I guess clean up the property, we recoup once it resells, correct?
So long as it sells for enough to pay your lien, yes. But it can't sell for less than that.
Okay.
So you become in essence like you become
that would
like
be
the
where
bank.
the bidding starts.
Yes, the bidding starts at 2/3 the appraised value, but it can't be less than what the lien amount is.
So, Brigham, it sounds to me like the biggest benefit of this improvement corporation is that the city's still paying for everything. And then it gets transferred to the community improvement, that the only benefit from that is you can sell it without going to bid.
Correct.
So we'd be doing all the same processes, spending all the same money. It's just that we can sell it without going to bid.
You're correct.
Thank you.
And Brigham, when you say that the city determines that it's a not usable property for the city, you mean for the city government?
Correct.
Okay.
Brigham, I've got a question. Once the city has control of the property, owns the property, if it does go through the bidding process, can you put deed restrictions on that with the sale of it? Like, whoever purchases this has to build a home valued at $100,000 within 2 years.
No, the only restrictions that would be placed on it are the current zoning restrictions. Now you see that in places like where the old hospital was, for example, they had deed restrictions. That's because that was part of that subdivision. So certain subdivisions can have deed restrictions, but you can't take a property on the block I live on here in the city and take one piece out of it and say, you have to build a certain thing on my block because I don't have any deed restrictions in my subdivision.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? I know we've talked about a lot here. Is everybody on the same kind of page though, or?
Do you see as the
I feel more comfortable after hearing that we are the lien holders. That was something that I didn't grasp that concept of the whole thing at the very beginning, but that's a little bit more comforting.
Okay. As far as the properties, Susan, you already have some that are condemned?
I have some that are ready to be condemned, and I have a couple that already are.
Okay. Have you already given them the registered letter with the 30 days?
Most of them come back when they're like that. We just tore down a couple that I couldn't get the owners and they didn't respond, but we've torn them down. When we assess this to their taxes, and then we have to keep assessing them to maintain that property, that's where everything adds up.
Is that list confidential or is that list confidential, or can you share that list, those properties?
I'd have to get them together for you.
Okay, if you don't care, once you get those together, do you care to send council a email with those properties and addresses, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like that too.
Susan, I think in this process, I think I think what you did was the first option that Brigham outlined in his opinion. Maybe Brigham, if you can speak to that. Option 2 would be a civil suit. Then option 3 would be a lien. So I think that's what Brigham talked about being involved, and also with the mayor as far as determining which of those 3 would probably be most appropriate for us to pursue. Is that correct, Brigham?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I think just kind of communication with Mayor, Brigham, Susan, Brett, as far as which one of those 3, and maybe those are all right as far as put it on the property tax and then continue the assessment, and when it forecloses them or whenever they do their thing, maybe we can recoup that. But I think, working as a team, getting some eyes on it, then we might be able to use those other 2 options.
Is Marta taking notes on this meeting tonight? I think, Craig, you asked her to.
Yeah, she was in North Carolina, Bob. So she said she's gonna watch it back and make notes from the recording or the broadcast.
Okay. I think we've covered a whole lot of stuff this evening that we weren't aware of.
Have we? We're at an hour, so I think we need to get a recommendation out of the committee of the whole for a board of directors, and then present that probably in miscellaneous on our next council meeting to vote on the recommendation. But the email from Brigham said that, or maybe, I don't know if it was from Brigham, I don't know, maybe from Nate, translating Mac, that there should be strong city oversight with a board of directors to include the mayor. So I would recommend out of council of the whole that the mayor be part of the board of directors, and I would entertain a second for that.
I'll second that.
Thanks. I heard Bob first, so just for the meeting minutes, Chris, I heard Bob.
Sounds good.
All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? Then also recommended is the city solicitor. Brigham, do you have a preference? Do you want you or Mac named, or just city solicitors?
You can name me.
Okay. I'll move to name Brigham Anderson as our city solicitor to the board of directors.
I'll second that.
I heard Bob again first, Chris. All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? A member at large appointed by the mayor. Mayor, do you have a name at your ready?
Yeah, Susan Dooley.
Okay. I'll take the mayor's recommendation for Susan Dooley and nominate her to the board of directors.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? Lastly, two council members, and I know Nate was interested, so I'll nominate Nate.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. And I know there were others that would like to be nominated, so I'll open it up for nominations. We have
I'll
Nate.
nominate Bob Clary.
Could I have the floor for a minute? Thank you, Michael. Can I have the floor
Sure,
there
Bob.
for a second?
Sure, Bob.
Okay, what I was wanting to say, I'd mentioned at the last meeting that I would be interested in serving on that. But the thing concerned me, put a lot of thought into it since that meeting. And there's 4 of us sitting there on council that's up for re-election this year, which we're only talking about 8 months, and who knows who's going to be there. So really, I think that I would not be interested with maybe only having 8 months. Hopefully I'll have 4 years in 8 months. But with only 8 months to go, I think that we should go with Mike. I think we'll do it with Chris. Both of them asked to be on it, and they've still got 4.5 or 2.5 years to go, because the people that's in this thing need to be able to stay on top of it and keep moving and not switch the guard and, before we get the first purchase. So I appreciate, Mike, you nominating me, but I'd like to turn that down. And matter of fact, I'd like to nominate you and Chris for those 2 positions, because when you look at it, out of the 4 of us that's up for election, it only leaves 3, and so you're 2 of them.
I'm good with that.
But, well, let me ask you guys this, if you don't care, what do you guys think we should have one person from each term? The alternating terms, have one from each, and appoint a new one every 2 years?
That's not a bad idea. I've seen that.
I was gonna go there, Chris, but then you and Mike have to enter the octagon and fight over which one of you is going from your term.
Well, I thank you, Bob, for that. I'm really trying to be involved with the sewer plant and all those things, and attending a lot of meetings with that. And so I would just decline that, and I would nominate Chris. I think he would do a great job.
Well, let me ask, even though you got a nomination, let me ask you this: do you think that we should postpone the 2 council members at large until the next regular meeting? Because I've already said that I'm not interested at this point now. But then I don't think Jacob's in this meeting. I haven't heard him. I haven't heard Beth. And so, we got 5 of us here and 2 missing. Would it be better to wait? And pardon me?
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just going to say, remember, this is like finance, where we just give a recommendation, but we can change that vote and make it official during miscellaneous. I was just trying to get a recommendation.
Okay, I was thinking this was the final thing.
No, sir. We'd have, just like any other boards that we appoint, we need to do that in council, on the council floor, under miscellaneous, or in communications if it was a letter from the mayor about his recommendation. But I just wanted to get recommendations and then do it appropriately and vote in miscellaneous in our next regular council meeting.
Okay.
Nate, did I hear you second Mike's nomination of Chris?
Yes.
So, Bob, did you need to say anything else?
Are you going to consider yourself in this?
No, I think you're right in the fact that I think you and Chris are both right. I think that it would probably make sense having one from each term and having someone expire. So Nate's term would expire with our election, and we'd have to reappoint someone from that new 4-member crew that gets sworn in December 1st. I think that makes sense, but again, we can discuss it amongst all of council in our next meeting.
I agree with that.
But we had we had a nomination for Nate that was seconded, a nomination for Chris that was seconded, and I'd just like to get a recommendation out of this committee for the floor of council. So, nomination for Nate that was seconded, aye.
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 Any nays? Nomination for Chris that was seconded, aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, thank you. That takes care of that portion of the business. Nate, did you have anything else?
I had one more thing. Again, going back to the money piece, as far as the cost to start this process, I asked Sam and Susan to kind of possibly evaluate that. What would be needed? Start the demolition process and be really starting to be aggressive with that. So I don't know if they could comment on that. Sam or Susan?
I would transfer money if needed. You know, get your bid, get your estimate, then be able to do the amendment as needed rather than transferring $50,000 in there when you need 25.
Yeah, either
Well,
thing, or we probably should go through the list that she has and kind of get a rough estimate. Like, we had estimates on what one would cost, but knowing that she has some already, kind of look at that and go from there.
Okay. All right. Let us know on that.
Quick question, did I hear earlier that there are already properties demolished that are ready for bid? Or are they getting ready to be ready for bid?
No, they've already been torn down and assessed to the taxes. It just takes a long time to recoup those.
Okay, so are those properties with the county land bank, or
No, the land bank does not have those.
so the city currently is stakeholders in those?
No, the city just tore the structures down because they had to come down.
And then we assess.
Yes, the property taxes.
Okay.
So Chris, I see where you're going. I mean, unless there's other lien holders, you know, I can get with Susan, but we may be able to file foreclosures on those and get you some money started up. Is that where you're headed?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Susan, did we use city money to tear them down, or grants? TDB?
No, it was city money.
What we used?
City's money.
Was it from one of the grants, or just out of the budget?
Just out of the demo fund.
Okay. How much money's in there, John? Do you have any guesstimate?
Bob, I don't have a detailed trial balance with me, but I'll send that out to you.
14,000.
14,000. Did I hear somebody say 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that kind of answers my questions. Yeah, Brigham, if you wouldn't care to follow up on that with Susan. And then, you know, I guess if I know you said, Susan, you have some on your list already for future. If you wouldn't care to possibly get some cost estimates for that. My last question is, and I just say this not to be selfish, but because the people you see on the screen here hears it in the community every day that this place is a dump and it's condemned. When we hear those addresses, what do we what do we need to do to get that information to you, and as far as feedback from you to us, as far as the process of where those properties sit.
I guess we could figure that out as we start this up, how we're going to do that and get it out there.
In the meantime, could we just email those to you at zoning?
Oh, absolutely.
email?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the second part I had also was just that little bit of money that would be needed for the Community Improvement Corporation for those operational expenses, like the form articles of incorporation or whatever would be needed for that. Again, it wouldn't be that much, but I think once the board gets established, you can have those conversations as a board and then ask the city council from that. That's all I had.
I have one
All
final
right.
question. Brigham, towards the very beginning, and I've been driving, so I didn't write it down, but you mentioned drafting legislation for something at the beginning of this. Do you recall what that was?
Yes, drafting legislation to establish the account, the external account, and
Okay.
any legislation to fund that. However, we can't do that until the articles of incorporation are approved by the Secretary of State. Because this is a community improvement corporation, the Ohio Attorney General also has to approve it. So we're probably 3 to 4 weeks out from today. It went in the mail today. So once we get the articles back, I'll email them to everybody and we can get that discussion going then.
And just for time's sake, when you get that back, I'd be happy to sponsor that legislation just to move that forward.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Before we leave, Bob, would you care to email me your telephone number?
Yes, sir.
Would you care to
Sure,
email me
I
your
can do
telephone
that. Yeah, once I don't have yours either. What's your telephone number, Michael?
Hey, how about Marta typed up a list for us. I'll email that out to you guys.
That'd be great.
Instead of doing it live on DLC communication.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you all next week.
All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Chris.
Second.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody have a good evening.
Yep. Sure.
See y'all.
See you.